Everyone has the right to a safe and stable home. This not only benefits each individual but also contributes to building a strong community. My goal is simple: to offer sincere help to those who are struggling with nothing but a genuine desire to support and bring a bit of comfort to them during difficult times. Today was originally expected to be a calm, royal day, a rare occasion to escape the tense formalities and simply enjoy some simple pleasures. But in the end, it sparked an unexpected change. A royal boundary was broken. What started as harmless children's jokes suddenly ignited a fire of outrage, spreading through the whispers behind the palace doors, where now every gaze no longer lingered on laughter alone. If you find this story interesting, please leave a comment with the number 0. If not, leave a comment with the number 1. Don't forget to like, share the video, and share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on other exciting videos. Now let's get started with the story. Prince Louis, the youngest and most energetic of the Wales trio, left the garden in tears. And this time, Prince William did more than just frown, he took action. What happened? Why was Camilla's granddaughter removed from the royal favor? Let's analyze it all. A picnic with hidden politics that was supposed to be just another fun royal outing with picnic blankets on the neatly trimmed grass of Balmoral. The children running wild and the corgis darting between teacups and sandwiches. No formal speeches, no rigid protocols, just family time, or so it seemed. King Charles had organized the event in hopes of bringing unity between his own bloodline and Camilla's extended family, a well-meaning idea that, however, left Kate, always the cautious mother, worried. Kate, the ever-cautious and composed mother, never allowed her calm demeanor to waver except when it came to her children, especially Prince Louis. Louis, the youngest and most energetic of the 3 Wales children, was always at the top of his game, with bright, sparkling eyes full of energy and charm. He played games and laughed with the usual confidence, his infectious giggle filling the afternoon air like a joyful soundtrack. However, when Camilla ensured that her grandchildren were present at the event, despite not being royal by blood or title, their presence could not escape attention. Some believed this was a subtle strategy by Camilla to blur the boundaries and integrate her family into the royal structure. The picnic seemed like another stitch in that ongoing plan. At first, everything seemed lighthearted, children playing parents, chatting, and nannies exchanging gossip over tea. But then something shifted. Kate's posture changed, her smile faded, and her eyes locked on Louis. The boy stood still, his face flushed, his expression unreadable. Facing him was one of Camilla's granddaughters. There was no more giggling, no more playing, only a tense moment sharp enough to slice through the summer air. Though it wasn't clear what had been said, it was obvious something was wrong. The kind of wrong that mothers recognize instantly. Kate began to move, calm yet cautious. This gathering was no longer just a picnic. It had become a reflection of deeper divides between the 2 families, a family cast aside and children caught in the crossfire. As Louis's usual sparkle faded, it became clear that royal life was far from the idyllic pictures people often see. Official photos couldn't hide the cracks in the family structure, the underlying tensions quietly unfolding. This became all the more evident as Kate's shift in attitude grew impossible to ignore. Everything seemed to change in an instant, as the light of a summer afternoon shifted from a light of joy to one that illuminated secrets, unresolved conflicts. And in the end, it was an unspoken confrontation between 2 royal families, between unity and division, between protecting royal bloodlines and embracing change within the family. The royal picnic was no longer a joyful occasion, but an underlying struggle, a sign that despite the glamorous pictures of the royal family behind them lie confrontations and complexities that cannot be spoken. Kate knew that this was not just harmless teasing on the playground, but the beginning of something much larger, more serious. However, what happened next unfolded too quickly and quietly for many adults to notice until it was too late. A harsh comment and a broken smile, all occurring in a brief moment, created an irreparable tension in the air. What seemed like innocent stories now touched on taboos, deep and difficult to resolve issues. Louis, always enthusiastic and full of energy, the youngest royal in the trio, managed to make even the most serious official events feel a little lighter. He was often the center of attention, from colorful parades to his mischievous actions. Once during a parade on the palace balcony, Louis yawned in the middle of the procession, and throughout the flight across, he covered his ears and screamed, drawing everyone's attention. Though his actions appeared cheeky and mischievous, behind that was a deep child closely connected to his family, especially to his mother, Kate. He loved her dearly and shared a strong emotional bond with her, and what happened in the garden that day deeply touched that bond. While the adults were busy with tea and royal gossip under the grand marquee, the children had split into smaller groups, creating a peaceful picture. But behind that was tension unnoticed by anyone. One patch of grass turned into an impromptu football field, another hosted a mock tea party with toy cups and mud sandwiches. Eventually, Louis bounced between the groups, finding himself alone near the rose garden, and that was when Camilla's granddaughter approached. It's unclear what sparked the exchange, but some say it began with a mocking laugh. Others believe it was driven by Louis's playful attempt at a royal bow, something he had done in jest to imitate his mother. What's certain, according to several insiders, is that the moment quickly escalated. "Do you really think your mom is going to become queen?" The girl was said to have mocked her voice loud enough for a few nearby children to hear, pretending that everyone already knew Camilla was the true one. At first, Louis blinked in confusion, then hurt his hand, stumbling to one side. He looked down at his shoes, and the warmth on his face began to fade. The boy sensed a shift in the atmosphere but couldn't understand why. Before he could react, she attacked again. This time, she struck at something even more personal: things adults usually avoid mentioning in front of children. The girl said mockingly, "The problem with the way you walk is that your prince is practicing. Do you think you're better than everyone else just because you live in a palace?" The words struck Louis like a knife to the soul, leaving him feeling not only hurt, but deeply offended. They were not just mockery. They were an attack on his family, on the royal title he carried. The boy, usually strong and confident, now felt small and confused. All the attention of the other children turned toward him, but Louis couldn't react immediately. He stood there, eyes wide open, looking down at his shoes as if they could somehow rescue him from the embarrassment of the moment. Kate, no longer able to maintain her usual calm, began to approach her son. She could clearly see the sadness and hurt on Louis's face. While she had always been a careful and thoughtful mother, in this moment, her protective instincts took over, and she moved swiftly into action. Not a word was spoken, but Kate's gaze alone was enough to convey that everything had changed. As the tension in the garden quietly escalated, Kate knew this was no longer a time for silence. This moment wasn't just a confrontation between two children. It was a quiet struggle between generations within the royal family, a story of protection and the price of power. Witnesses described Louis's face shifting from confusion to pain, his cheeks flushed, and his bright, mischievous eyes starting to well up with tears. Then someone mentioned that he looked utterly crushed, not because the words were too harsh, but because he had never expected them from someone who was supposed to be family. One child giggled, another awkwardly turned away, but no one intervened. Trembling Louis did the only thing a 6-year-old could think of. He ran straight to the edge of the garden where Kate stood quietly with Charlotte. Before Kate could react, Louis threw himself into her arms, crying uncontrollably. His small body shook on her dress as she held him tight, her hand gently cradling the back of his head. Kate didn't need to ask what had happened. Louis's look told her everything. His confidence, his light had been stolen, and in its place stood a child who felt ridiculed, misunderstood, and unsafe. The scene was deafening in its silence, the crowd frozen in place. Even the corgi dogs, who had been eagerly chasing shadows just moments before, stood still. Camilla was a few feet away, witnessing the scene, but not moving. It was unclear whether she didn't grasp the gravity of what had just happened or had chosen not to understand, but what was clear was that Kate saw everything. She held Louis close, her expression unreadable, yet something inside her was about to explode, not out of panic or dramatic outburst, but a deep fury that only a mother could know. Kate looked up across the garden, her gaze finding William, and in that wordless moment, everything shifted. Kate's silent storm. Kate Middleton, known for her calm and grace under pressure, her ability to smile through scandal and stand firm in royal storms. But in that moment, no palace training, no school of diplomatic charm, no media etiquette could have prepared her for what she felt. As Louis collapsed into her arms, his face flushed with embarrassment and pain, to the outside world, she remained composed, her hand gently stroking his hair, her voice soft as she whispered something into his ear. But anyone who had ever witnessed a mother shift into protective mode would recognize the look in her eyes. Behind that calm exterior was a cold storm rushing in. Kate was cautious and strong, avoiding chaos, no dramatic confrontation or public reprimands. Instead, she silently rose, holding Louis's hand with one and signaling for Charlotte with the other. The three of them walked back to the palace together, each step purposeful, each movement composed, but with a trained eye. It was clear she wasn't retreating. She was recalibrating, calculating. Camilla watched them walk away, but didn't move, perhaps unaware of what had just happened. Or perhaps mistakenly assuming it would blow over like a passing gust, like one of those royal gossip stories. After all, children always fight right, but not this time. Once inside, Kate led Louis to a private sitting room away from the royal entourage and event coordinators. She knelt down to his level, her hand resting on his shoulder, her gaze locking onto his. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said softly. At first, Louis hesitated, but then growing more confident, the words began to pour out. He spoke of the teasing, the comments about his manners, the way he walked, and the cruel remark about his mother not being a real queen. And finally, something Kate hadn't expected, another insult whispered under Camilla's granddaughter's breath. "At least my grandmother didn't die because of the crown." It was the moment Kate's eyes grew cold. It wasn't just the cruelty of children, but the intent behind it. It was personal, and worst of all, it had been learned from somewhere from someone. No child would speak like that unless they had heard it at home. That was the detail Kate couldn't escape. Her son hadn't just been hurt by a cousin's teasing, he had been wounded by a legacy. The whispers and rumors were passed down like a family recipe the memory of Diana used as a punchline. Louis was too young to fully understand the weight of it, but he still felt its sting. Kate didn't cry, she didn't shout, but the atmosphere in the room shifted. Within an hour, she summoned her personal secretary. Her instructions were simple and clear: cancel all appointments, no school pickup, no charity visits, no ribbon-cutting ceremonies. She was staying with Louis. But even more urgent, she called William. The next morning, Kensington Palace began its usual workday. Meetings and appointments were scheduled as per the long-prepared timetable. However, none of those present at the palace that day knew that a momentous decision was about to be made. William, with his undeniable solemnity, quietly summoned his most senior aides to a private office where there would be no interruptions from the media or any showmanship. The door to the room closed with a soft click, and a heavy silence enveloped the space. The aides stood around the desk, their gazes betraying their curiosity as they looked at William, who sat with a contemplative expression. No greetings or introductions, just an extended silence that grew almost unbearable. The only sounds were the footsteps of those in the room and the pounding of William's heart, as the thoughts and emotions from the night before continued to swirl within him. William looked at his aides, and finally he spoke, his voice unwavering. Today we must decide. What happened to Louis cannot be overlooked. The look in his eyes, the pain in his gaze. It's not a simple hurt. This is much bigger than that. William began, his eyes locking onto each face around him. We cannot let this continue. Camilla is not part of this family, at least not in the way she's tried to insert herself. Everyone in the room could feel the tension in the air. They understood that this was not just a family decision, but an action that could alter the future of the monarchy. William's words carried the weight of a future king, but also reflected the immense responsibility of a father, one who could not accept his child being hurt in any way. If you find this story intriguing and want to learn more, don't forget to like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any other captivating stories. Now let's continue with the story. Kate had done everything she could protecting Louis from the emotional harm inflicted by someone she considered family. But now the responsibility had shifted to William, who had to do something to prevent further harm, not just to his own child, but to the royal family as a whole. We will have to make an official decision about Camilla's place in this family. William continued, his voice sharp and decisive. I can't allow her to continue pretending she's one of us. No more favoritism. The aides stood frozen, not daring to speak. They all recognized that what William had just said was not a preparation for a small decision. He had drawn a clear line, one that could not be undone. The meeting stretched on in silence as the aides pondered William's words and the important decision looming ahead. She has to understand that we cannot allow anyone to harm this family. We cannot let anyone undermine the values we've fought to protect. William said, his gaze never leaving those around him. As the meeting concluded, the aides quickly left, carrying with them a clear message about what had happened and what was to come. Meanwhile, William returned to his office and gazed out of the window. He felt a certain relief, though he knew the decision would not be easy and would stir turmoil within the royal family. The next day, as meetings and royal duties resumed as usual, no one knew that a new battle had begun, one not just about power, but about dignity and the protection of family. The walls inside that room closed in as William presented everything calmly and clearly, without anger, but with an unmistakable determination. He began with an incident involving Prince Louis and declared that this matter would have consequences. This was not a rash or hasty reaction, but a carefully considered decision rooted in respect, the protection of family, and the principles he had been raised with throughout his life. He wasn't seeking an apology, nor did he want carefully worded statements or the typical reconciliatory solutions. What William needed was clear accountability and a boundary, a firm, immediate limit. The young girl who had insulted Louis, someone whose bond with and protection from the royal family could not be denied, would no longer be welcome at any royal events involving William's children. No invitations to ceremonies, no participation in charity events, no symbolic walks where the children typically appear before the public alongside Charlotte and George. All previous signs of her integration into the royal circle were completely halted, erased, as something unacceptable. As William made these changes, his assistants and insiders were stunned, but not because they disagreed with his decision. The surprise came from the fact that William no longer sought consensus or consulted anyone. He made the decision as a leader, a protector, and most importantly, as a father. He was not just a prince within the family, he had stood up for his own, for the well-being of his children. Ultimately, he had drawn a clear line between what was acceptable and what was unforgivable. This was not just a response to a minor playground insult, but a powerful message to the monarchy itself, one that had witnessed many clashes and fractures, but had never seen a firm decision like this. Heritage was not derived from bloodlines, but from actions, honor, and loyalty. For the first time in many years, William no longer respected the crown blindly or out of habit. He stood before it, looked it squarely in the eye, and decided that whether the institution liked it or not, the balance of royal power had changed forever. For William, true power was not in blind respect for the crown, but in protecting the values and his family, regardless of the criticism or pressure he might face. William's message was not just a simple request. It was a statement and assertion of his power within the royal family and to those who would follow in his footsteps. He sent a shockwave not only through the family, but to all those observing the process. A message that signified a change not just in power, but in how the royal family would operate in the future. For the first time, power was no longer defined solely by rituals and bloodlines, but by actions and personal responsibility. Within just 24 hours of that decision, the change began to ripple through the palace halls like a silent earthquake. Everything had shifted. The old habits, the rules, and the long-standing ways of operation within the royal family had been disrupted. The presence of Camilla and her family, once thought to be an inseparable part of the dynasty, could no longer appear in the same space, nor be accepted at royal events and ceremonies. This wasn't just a shift in organizational structure. It was a reaffirmation of what the royal family stood for. Recognition was no longer based on political relationships, but on loyalty actions and the protection of family, especially when the children were harmed. Never in modern history had a royal family witnessed such a bold and abrupt decision, and no matter what is said about William's decision in the future, no one could deny that it marked a pivotal turning point in the evolution of the royal family. It was the first step in redefining power and respect within a monarchy that had long faced challenges, criticism, and even fractures. There were no press conferences, no official statements, but those in the know could feel the tremors of change and understood the gravity of the decision. By midday, William's decision was quietly communicated to the key departments of the royal family. Camilla's granddaughter, once gently scheduled to appear at prestigious events, was removed from all future plans involving the next generation of the monarchy. No ceremonial role, no invitations, no participation in important royal events. These changes were not simply about removing a name from the ceremonial list. They marked a severing, a statement that royal favor was not granted through blood ties or covert strategies. For years, Camilla had quietly brought her family into the royal spotlight. Her grandchildren, though not royals by blood, had participated in coronation processions, appeared in prominent photos, and attended intimate palace events. This was not official, but it was a subtle strategy, a quiet campaign to reinforce their proximity to the throne. However, William saw through it, and now, after the cruel moment aimed at Louis, he not only lifted the veil but slammed the door shut. The young girl who had made Louis cry would no longer be allowed near him or his siblings. Not on birthdays, not on holidays, not even during staged photo sessions. This was not a punishment, but a boundary, a signal that royal favor was not granted through blood ties, but through integrity and dignity. And perhaps most notably, William did not seek King Charles's permission before making this decision. This was what stunned even the highest palace aides who had served for decades. The royal hierarchy traditionally dictated that Charles would approve or deny major family matters, but this time William acted first and informed afterward. For William, this was not about royal tradition. It was about protecting a child. He wasn't interested in shallow apologies or carefully crafted excuses. As one aide later said, William didn't want an apology. He wanted space. He wanted peace for his children. By the time Charles read the letter, the decision had already been enacted. And for Camilla's granddaughter, any peaceful future she imagined alongside the next generation of the royal family had vanished. No ceremonies, no compromises, and not a word spoken to the press. Camilla's collapse and Charles's silence were inevitable. William's letter arrived at Clarence's house in the late morning, delivered by a senior royal courier with an unusually somber expression. Camilla, sitting in her private sitting room with a half-finished cup of tea, received the letter without ceremony. But as she read William's words, her hand began to tremble. Her granddaughter had hindered the slow, deliberate integration of her family into royal life, shattering the status and honor that Camilla had quietly worked to establish. Both Camilla and her family, who had worked so hard to build closeness with the royal family, now faced this sudden and serious shift. Camilla couldn't believe this had happened. Shock and outrage surged within her, and she shouted at a servant, unable to understand why William had acted this way without consulting Charles. "Charles will never allow this," she yelled. But the truth was, this was not a mistake. It was a deliberate decision. William hadn't consulted Charles before acting. He had made his decision without seeking approval, simply informing him afterward. Camilla's fury quickly overtook her initial confusion, and she stormed out of the room, heading down the corridor of Clarence's house, demanding an explanation, criticizing everything she saw as a personal vendetta. Her voice echoed down the hallway, a rare breach of the calm and patient demeanor she had maintained for so long. Camilla's next move was swift. She made her way directly to Charles's office, the letter William had sent him still in her hand. She demanded that Charles intervene, telling him, "He's your son." She shouted, "But this is too much. This is punishment, not protocol." However, Charles, weary and tense, did not offer support to Camilla. His response was quiet but firm. "I will not dismiss him," he said, not with malice or indifference, but with the weight of understanding. William had taken a clear stand, not only as a father, but as the future of the crown. Charles, now caught between his wife and his heir, chose silence. Camilla felt betrayed. After all the years she had stood by Charles, weathering scandals and constant scrutiny. Now she was isolated, her family pushed back into the shadows. During all that time, she had struggled to escape the shadow of the monarchy. But now it felt like everything had collapsed. Worse still, she suspected Kate was behind it all. In her eyes, this wasn't just William protecting his son, it was Kate drawing lines that Camilla could never cross. Camilla believed she had crossed one of those lines that night. Camilla canceled her appearance at a charity gala citing fatigue, but those within the palace began to notice the shift. The influence of the queen was fading, and a new era of the monarchy, one without a crown, without speeches, was announced solely through the actions of a father protecting his son. The public and media's reaction to William's bold move began to ripple beyond the palace walls. While the royal family could act in silence, the public could not remain silent forever. Both the public and the media were watching every move of the royal family. The public had chosen sides. Power was no longer just a game played behind closed doors. Now everything was unfolding in the open, and the royal family was facing inevitable reactions from society. Within hours of William's quiet decision, news had spread beyond the palace walls. Initially, the information leaked through anonymous sources within the royal family, but it didn't take long for the story to flood the headlines and dominate social media platforms. Hashtags like "Protect Louis," "Not Your Queen," and "William was right" quickly gained traction. The story of Prince Louis being bullied and William's decision to bar Camilla's granddaughter from royal activities sparked a major public outcry. The story wasn't just about a scandal or a power struggle, it was about a child and how the public viewed the royal family's actions. This story made a difference. It wasn't about scandals or breaches of protocol. It was about a child being hurt and how the royal family stood up to protect their own. The public did not hesitate to express their support for William, especially as he placed his son's well-being above everything else. Teachers and psychological experts shared their perspectives on the impact of bullying on young children, and many praised Kate for her firm and composed stance in defending her family without seeking sympathy from the media. One tweet captured the essence of the message. Prince Louis may be the youngest, but today he taught the monarchy what real strength looks like. These words clearly reflected a shift in the public's perception of the royal family, with fans comparing William to Diana, recalling how she fiercely protected her sons from the rigidity of royal life. This time, that protection came not from public defiance, but from decisiveness and action in the shadows. Artists began sharing illustrations of Louis standing proudly with a small golden crown gently perched on his head, while other images depicted Diana and William as children with Kate holding Louis in her arms. These visuals sent a clear, powerful message: the next chapter of the monarchy was being written, and this time it would come with boundaries that could not be crossed. Soon after, public support for William and Kate surged, while feelings toward Camilla turned cold. Memes mocking Camilla began circulating, depicting her as out of touch, and polls showed a significant drop in her popularity. The Queen's silence, once seen as restraint, was now viewed as arrogance. Within royal circles, many staff members shifted their loyalties, with some aides requesting transfers to Kensington Palace's media offices, where Camilla's story was being exposed to the public. However, the most significant moment came on a quiet Sunday. As William, Kate, George, Charlotte, and Louis stepped out of the car to attend a church service, the crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but soft, respectful applause full of support. Louis, a bit unsure, looked up at his mother, and Kate bent down to whisper something only he could hear. Yet the message that hung in the air was unmistakable: strong public support for the Wales family and their resilience during difficult times. The monarchy didn't just survive the change, it actively chose it, and this was clearly reflected in Camilla's quiet withdrawal from the spotlight. In the days that followed, she officially stepped back from public attention, citing health-related fatigue, but insiders whispered a different truth. They said her wounds were not physical, but to her pride. Camilla had once been confident in her growing influence within the royal family, but now she felt herself being pushed to the periphery. She had once been seen as the one expected to strengthen her family's position within the royal circle and had taken careful steps to solidify her ties to royal power. However, after this event, public sympathy for her vanished. Royal insiders, longtime staff members, and former allies began to distance themselves. Her media allies also fell silent, and invitations to major events were quietly canceled. Her decades-long strategy to integrate her family into the royal legacy had now shattered in just one afternoon. Though she still had to smile for the cameras when necessary, those close to her revealed that she had never truly forgiven William and Kate. Meanwhile, within the walls of the palace, one undeniable truth was clear: Camilla had been outmaneuvered. Not through scandal or controversy, but through principle. The Queen had lost public support, and the patience of the people was no longer on her side. This sudden change forced Camilla to face a harsh reality. In the eyes of the public, she was no longer seen as a figure of power, but as someone pushed out of the game. The relationship between her and the royal family, particularly with William, had been severely fractured, once again raising questions about her true place in the monarchy. Her image in the public eye was slowly being erased, not because of past mistakes, but because she could not adapt to the principles and values that the royal family stood for. So what do you think about Prince William's move? Has he gone too far, or is this a bold step that the monarchy truly needs to protect its future? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more fascinating royal stories. Stay tuned and discover even more untold royal revelations.